Hello, everyone. Welcome to the District 83 Podcasting Interest Meeting. We're so excited to have you here because this session is one of several club growth initiatives inspired by feedback from our Toastmaster members across the district. Just to explain, this is what we call an interest meeting. And one designed like this is to showcase the potential of a new club before it becomes official. Some of you may know, and some may not, Toastmasters International requires a minimum of 20 members to charter a new club. Our hope is that tonight's demonstration and informational session will spark enough enthusiasm that at least 20 of you will choose to become founding members of this exciting specialty club. This session is all about exploring what a podcast-focused Toastmasters Club could look like. You'll get a sense of the skills involved, the creative possibilities, and how podcasting aligns beautifully with the Toastmasters educational program. By the end of this session, we want you to understand the basics of podcasting, experience a live podcast demonstration, see how Toastmaster skills support podcast creations, envision how a podcast could be structured, and of course, get answers to your questions about membership and the chartering process. Ultimately, we hope you'll feel inspired to help bring this club to life. This is what you should expect tonight. We're going to first do a brief introduction to podcasting fundamentals. As I say, we will have a live podcast presentation to showcase just one style of podcasting, something I learned. There's different ways, different styles of podcasting. We'll take a look at how Toastmaster skills translate into podcasting success. We'll do an exploration of possible club design and structure and the Q&A discussion. To get started, I'd like to introduce a key facilitator for this session. Kimberly Winters is the creator and host of the niche podcast, Did You Bring the Hummus? This is a project that began as her Level 4 Pathways assignment, Create a Podcast. Over the past 5.5 years, Kimberly has grown tremendously as a speaker, interviewer, and producer. As a one-woman operation, she manages everything from booking guests to producing and releasing each episode. Kimberly is genuinely excited about the possibility of a podcast-focused Toastmaster Club, a space where she and others can continue to develop their podcasting skills with a supportive and collaborative Toastmasters environment that we all know and love. Let's welcome Kimberly Winters.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new people that I'm excited to meet. One person that you'll see here in the audience, I'm totally going to call you out, Jen. She is my co-host. I do a YouTube show as well with Jen, and that is called That Vegan Morning Show. So I've got two things going on, but today we'll focus on the podcasting. So what is a podcast? So traditionally, a podcast was audio only. It's something that you would listen to when you're driving or doing the dishes. And that still is very much what we think of when we think podcast, but it has honestly expanded into video as well. Some audio podcasts have started to add video, so you may see older episodes that are just audio, and now newer episodes incorporate a video component to them. Some people like me keep it traditional, and I only do audio. When I interview my guests, we do meet like this face to face, but the video never goes anywhere, which is really nice because I love the idea of just being able to be in the moment and not worry about what I look like on video. So if you are feeling a little trepidatious about that, know that a traditional podcast can and many people would expect it to be audio only. So if you're a little nervous, just want to quell that a little bit for you. One of the great things about podcasting is how it has become like the new medium. So many people are looking for another way to engage with very niche or things that they're so interested in that you don't typically find on traditional radio or even television. The podcast world is like millions of podcasts are out there. And one of the things that we'll talk about and how a Toastmasters club can really help us keep going is pod fade. It's a real thing. Doing a podcast can be exhausting, especially if it's not your full-time job. So learning skills and how to produce things in an effective way is something that we would work on in a club like this. Common formats of podcasting include solo. Are you an expert? Do you want to share information that you have in your industry? Something that you just have always loved and done research on? It doesn't matter. But if you love to talk about it, you can just turn on a mic and talk. You can also interview people. Most of my episodes are interviews. I like to bring in people who have a special story or something interesting they're working on that my listeners I know will be interested in. You can do a panel. Do you want to talk to more than one person? Do you really want to maybe get a debate going? Something that kind of like fires people up or inspires people? Get a panel. Talk to 3, 4, 5 people. Ask questions. Learn how to lead a group like that. You can also storytell. There are podcasts out there where there's sounds like we're doing like almost like a movie, like the way radio was when it first started, where there's all these different characters and you can hear someone like walking through the woods or fire crackling in the background. And it's such a cool way to share a story without having to write a book that you turn into an audiobook. So it's podcasting can be whatever you want it to be, which can feel kind of big at first, but means that you can have so much fun with it. Podcasting is growing. Almost everyone that I know, anecdotal, has a favorite podcast. They're right in your pocket, right in your phone. You can download as many as you want. There's short ones, there's long ones. Like I said earlier, you can listen while doing the dishes, in the shower, wherever you want to have some entertainment. Podcasts are showing up. And I saw a stat earlier today that 55% of Americans listen to podcasts. So your audience is out there. You just have to get up and do the podcast so you can find them. Why does it align to Toastmasters skills? Think about from an interview perspective. One of the things that I have really grown in were my evaluator skills. And now how that shows up in my podcasting is I know when to pause and listen. I know when I'm editing where those filler words are and how to take them out. There's so many ways that we can grow as speakers and listeners while doing a podcast that just expands what we are capable of. So now that you've got a little taste of what a podcast could be, I'd love to introduce Sue and Greg and have them show you what it can look like.
Thank you, Kimberly. Hello. Welcome to Season 1 of the Podcasters Lab Toastmasters in District 83 Toastmasters, sharing your voice. I'm your host, Sue Brooks. With me today is podcaster Greg Gazin, a proud Toastmaster member for 24 years, a 6-time distinguished Toastmaster, past public relations manager, and past District 42 director to share insights for Toastmasters and future Toastmasters who share an interest in podcasting or learning how to get started. Podcasting since 2006, Greg has hosted over 500 podcast interviews, serves as host of the official Toastmasters podcast, and produces Toastcaster, Communication and Leadership Learning Lab podcast. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks for having me.
How did you get into podcasting, and how has podcasting changed since you started?
Well, I started with audio back when I was a kid, mixing tapes and cutting and splicing tape. I'm sure some of you could probably relate to that. But later on, I was a tech columnist and always been a sort of a gadget guy. And I thought it would really be cool to put together a podcast. But like everything else, it sat on the back burner. I needed a push. And then it was getting time for me to complete my first DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster designation. So I opted to choose it for a high performance leadership project, HPL. So I approached our district governor at the time, now district director, and I said, I'd like to interview you for a podcast. And she says, Great, Greg, good idea. What's a podcast? 20 years later, 20 years later, I'm still going. Podcasting back then was really more of a niche for techies and hobbyists. Everything was done manually. We didn't have the tools that we have today. But today everyone has a built-in voice recorder. You've got Spotify for creators. You've got a whole bunch of AI tools. So it takes that part of it a lot more out of the equation. That's how podcasting has changed. But for me, how podcasting has really changed is that when I first started, again, the geek guy wanted to be sort of a nice, cool episode music, fading in and out. But now for me, it's really more about storytelling and helping my guests put them on a pedestal and help them create their stories, help them tell their stories the best way.
Thank you, Greg. I love that. The storytelling aspect really resonates with me. Greg, what are some of the Toastmaster skills that you can gain or apply from podcasting?
So there are literally so many that I could write a book, but I'm working on an article for the June issue of the Toastmaster magazine. Kim already alluded to a few of them. Low-hanging fruit, of course, is the impromptu, the table topics that we do in Toastmasters. And of course, active listening. You need to listen to what your guest is saying so that you can respond. What's not obvious is that you can learn things from podcasting from three sides of the mic. You can learn from being a listener, you can learn from being a guest, and you can also learn from being a host. As a listener, you can be educated or inspired by the content that you hear. I recently interviewed last episode that was released yesterday. I interviewed Frank Tsuro. He lives between Zimbabwe and South Africa, and he was sharing his insights about an article that was in the Toastmaster magazine about the phenomenal double-digit and triple-digit growth in Africa over a period of a decade, whereas here in North America, some clubs are actually struggling. You also learn about storytelling techniques. That's one thing you can learn by listening to a podcast. By being a guest, of course, there's the impromptu, but you can also learn to build your personal brand, right? You can develop relationships with the audience. And if you're there and you're showing off your skills or you're talking about your wares, you can also showcase your products and your services from your company. As a Toastmaster, I'm always out there trying to promote Toastmasters, so I can do that as a guest. As a host, of course, it's your podcast. You own it all. It's all yours. All of the above, plus, of course, you can build rapport and relationships with guests. Project planning is another thing that you can learn from. But also, as a host, you can establish yourself as a thought leader, but not by answering the questions, but by asking them. If you ask meaningful, insightful questions, people will look at you as a thought leader. Someone actually said that to me. I wasn't even aware of that.
Wow. I never knew that podcasting could provide so many takeaways. Greg, which learnings have been the most meaningful for you?
Well, I learned something from every podcast, whether it's the content, whether it's the style that the person is using, or maybe it's just their stories. I recently interviewed Ari Siegel, who's a Toastmaster, but also he was successful on the Shark Tank. He got to turn down Mr. Wonderful. For those of you who are familiar with Shark Tank, another important learning for me is learning the ability to ask great questions and follow-ups, and also to make sure that you put your phone on Do Not Disturb. Anyways, I talked about Ari's being on the Shark Tank. when I was talking to him, he was telling me he wasn't nervous. But then I thought, you know what? I said to him, Ari, from the outside, you look calm, but really what's going on inside? And when he started to speak, it started to unravel a whole different kind of conversations. That's where the conversation begins. And the third thing, I'm just trying to think, there's so many. I think maybe the ability and the willingness to drive the conversation. When you write a speech or you prepare a speech, you know in advance who the audience is, you know what the message is going to be, you can prepare your content. With a podcast, and I'm sure Kim can relate to this, when your guest will answer a question, it may not take the direction that you thought it was going to take. And so you're actually being like a GPS and you're sort of navigating the conversation. And depending on what they're saying, you're constantly thinking, okay, is this resonating? Is it clear? Is there a lesson here? You know, where do I go next? And so you're listening, but you're also thinking ahead. And for a guy like me whose short-term memory isn't very good, it can sometimes be a challenge. But over time, you get better at it. Does it always work? No. Sometimes things just go off the rails and you need to stop and start again. And then finally, I think you just need to be flexible. And when things happen, you learn to pick that back up. And I think that's something that Kim had also mentioned as well.
Thank you so much for that, Greg. And for our last question, what 3 tips do you have for listeners who are ready to create their own podcast?
Well, the first thing I think is you need to find your why. What's your purpose? When people are going to be tuning into your show or your program, what are they going to expect? If it's just everything about anything, it's really not going to work. So you need to figure out your purpose, because after a couple of episodes, you will experience, as Kim mentioned, that pod fade. You're going to say, okay, well, we talked about this. Where are we going to go next? Is your goal to share a message? Are you going to be talking about maybe exploring your favorite hobby? Even if it's something like fishing, general fishing, well, there's so many out there, but maybe it's ice fishing in Alaska, or maybe it's ice fishing in the Gulf of Mexico, which I don't think will happen, but just something like that. The why for Toastmasters podcast, for example, well, we are all things Toastmasters. However, we do have a very specific why. And that why is to amplify the words and the stories and the photos in the magazine. So every episode is tied to a magazine article. So for example, we just recently interviewed Frank Zero. That was yesterday's release. There is an article related so that we can relate back to it. So that's our why, is to amplify the words and the voice. And let's see, was that one? I got 2 more. The second one is get yourself a decent mic. You do not have to spend thousands of dollars on equipment. The mic I have here is a Samsung Q2U. It's about $70 US. You want it to sound decent, because if people are having trouble listening to it, like I've heard people record in their cars where there's so much background noise, you just get fed up and you just let it go. Also, this particular mic has a headphone jack connection. So what happens is I can hear what's going through, like I'm speaking into it, I can hear what's going through it. The worst that can happen is doing a recording, and then when you go to listen to it, it's not there. And the last thing would be like Nike and just do it. Record something. Everyone has a phone in their pocket. When I do this type of presentation at a conference, I'll say, everyone, pick up your phone and talk to the person next to you. If you don't like it, you don't have to release it. You can throw it away. But I find that those who never start will never do. And the low-hanging fruit there would be check out the level 4 Toastmasters elective on podcasting. And there's lots of people out there to help you. So figure out your why, make sure you have a decent mic, and be like Nike and just do it.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was amazing, wonderful tips, and a lot of excellent nuggets that we could all take home with us. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a production of the Podcasters Lab Toastmasters in District 83 Toastmasters for Season 1, Sharing Your Voice. Thanks to our guest, Greg Gazin, for joining us today to share his expertise. Many thanks to our team of officers and our podcast production team. Tune in again to our Spotify channel for upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was wonderful. So, the next piece of our meeting is to give a little debrief and skill breakdown of what we just witnessed. I would love, though, before I share my thoughts, we have a bunch of Toastmasters in the audience and people who are leading their own shows. So, I'd love for you to tell me, what skills did you see used? You can put your hand up or just, yell out.
Being able to respond to what your interviewee says and follow up coherently on it.
Right, because you're listening, right? You could tell Sue was listening to what Greg had to say, and she was able, even if she had another question in her head, thinking, "Okay,
Right.
here's where I'm going to go next." When you're
Yeah,
paying attention to your interviewee, you can quickly pivot. So thank you, table topics, to be able to ask a different question.
yeah. Be able to switch and remember that what that person is saying is the most important thing in the room.
Yeah, right. That's why you have them on your show. That's true, Ari. Articulation and patience. Yes. Sometimes too, we want to be able to, even if we might feel like the guest is going a little bit long, and I'm not saying, Greg, that you were. Uh, we sometimes might want to let them go if you feel like it's going somewhere. So that comes back to paying attention, being able to pivot, because you never know the like nuggets that they're going to share, and there might be something of pure brilliance that comes out that if you had not been patient, you wouldn't have made it to that point, and they wouldn't have shared that little bit of brilliance with you and your audience. Anyone else? Active listening, absolutely, Denise.
Timing.
Yeah, right. Pacing of the interview, keeping it moving. What about Sue's level of excitement?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah,
really enthusiastic and didn't overdo.
absolutely.
I'd like to chime in. I think knowing your why is really critical, but it doesn't have to be as you're launching your podcast. It can be along the journey, but I love the knowing your why.
Me too, for sure. Oh, that's an interesting question, Ari. I know for me and other podcasters in the room, please share. I don't rehearse anything in advance. I may, if when I'm interviewing someone, sometimes if I don't know a lot about them and my podcast is very niche, so I need to have some information, I'll do a quick call with them ahead of recording the episode. But we don't rehearse anything. It's very off the cuff, very much a table topics type thing.
Yes, that's definitely true. I'm sorry, my name is Richard. I do comedy too, and you definitely hit a nail because what I do the same thing. I have a little script, and then I just don't rehearse it. I just go for it. I don't go and go back and like what should I say something like that. It's just do it the way Greg was saying.
Yeah.
What I do is I will gauge the comfort of the guest, because sometimes you'll have a guest who's extremely uncomfortable. Sometimes I will talk to them ahead. Some actually ask for the questions ahead of time. I try not to give it to them verbatim. I like to try to make it as free as possible. One time I gave a list of questions, and they were written answers. So of course, when you stop the person, you can say, okay, well, how did that make you feel? That usually they can't prepare for. So that's something the whole idea though, is at the end of the day is you want to win for the audience and you want to win for the guest. You don't really want to scare them. If you know that they're going to be long-winded, you might cut them short. Sue and I talked earlier, and I know you were looking at around 10 minutes. I didn't see a timer anywhere. I was just trying to guess and gauge the amount of time you wanted for a podcast. So I kind of gauge it. And I agree with everyone in the sense that you don't want to make it too scripted, but at the same time, you want to try to keep it as you want to keep it as concise as possible. And I do editing, so especially when I trip over my words all the time. So I do a lot of editing, and you try to be as concise as possible. And then if you need to cut things out, you just cut things out.
Absolutely. Okay. Let me see. Any other thoughts on skills that were used?
I have a question about guests. Do other people interview their guests before, have conversations with their guests before the show, before they book them even?
My answer is sometimes. How about everybody else?
Why sometimes? How do you decide yes
Yeah,
or no? Which way,
that's
why to do it?
that's a great question. And for me, it's come from the growth of the podcast. At the beginning, I needed to make sure that the people who were coming to me actually fit the profile of the guest that I'm looking for. I was getting people recommended to me that didn't really fit from people that like knew what I was doing, but maybe didn't understand what I was doing. And now there's a level of expertise associated with my podcast. There, people understand what's happening, and they will recommend. I have very trusted people who will recommend people for the podcast, so I don't necessarily need to speak with them ahead of time. But if they come kind of from off the street, if you will, and I don't know anything about them, then I will have a quick chat, but it's never more than 15 minutes. So I don't want to spoil the magic of the interview.
Amen, Kimberly. You don't want to spoil the magic of the interview. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
We'll sometimes exchange emails back and forth, or what I might do is, for example, I interviewed a guy named Dave Biobaranic. He was an F-14 Rio, and he was on the original Top Gun movie. He actually flew in one of the planes, and he was a consultant, and he was trying to promote his book. And so that was fine. I had no issues with him talking about the book, but I wanted to focus on the leadership of doing what he does, because a split second can make a difference between life and death. So that's the focus I wanted to have, was on the leadership, and he was fine with that. And sometimes the pre-interview, or it could be just an email that goes back and forth.
I would say like 90% of the time, also interview them in advance because I want, and that's usually where I just learn what types of things to talk about with them because I get some of my best questions from those conversations. It's just like a laid back conversation, get to know them for like 30 minutes. The only time I don't interview them is if I met them somewhere before or I really have a sense of what they're about. If they're like an author who I know a lot of information from them already and I feel like we would connect well. But I would say like 90% of the time I do meet with people in advance just to make sure we have a good rapport. And also it usually gives me some inspiration on types of questions to ask.
I have another one along those lines. Or am I dominating the questions? I'm sorry. Uh, how do you script? How much research do you do about the people you're interviewing so that you know the best angle to take?
Hmm. So I would say that there's kind of two parts to that. The best angle to take is always the one that serves your audience and that, as Greg has pointed out, really highlights the guest and why they're there and to have this conversation with you. Sometimes I am very like I say sometimes I am very loose. I don't write. I have one question that I always open every episode with, and I have one question I close every episode with, and everything else just flows from the conversation. I don't write any other questions. But some people are very structured. Even if the guest wants questions, they don't get them, and then they have to decide, am I the right podcast host for them? So there are ways to do it. You'll figure out as you get started, just do it. You'll figure out what works for you, because at first I thought I needed a whole script to make sure that I was serving my audience properly. And for me, that actually held me back.
I like an outline style. I like to do a pre-interview because I really get to know my guests. My guests are chefs around the world and they're nervous. And it also helps to give them a little coaching, a little, you know, confidence. And I think that that has played really well in my podcast. In the beginning, I did it freeform and I found I spent a lot of time editing. And now I feel like with a little bit of structure, not everything structured, just a little bit of structure, it makes it much smoother, easier to follow, easier to edit, and the guests really like it.
Nice. Thank you. So we do have time at the end for questions, but I don't want to miss the opportunity for Pamela to come back and share with us the vision for the club.
Thank you, Kimberly. Yes, we did get a little off track with the Q&A up front, but that's perfectly fine. This is a learning opportunity and exploration, as I stated before. But as I mentioned in the beginning, the purpose of this meeting is to give you an idea of what a podcasting club would look like, what the skill sets are, how does it tie into Toastmasters. The exciting part is that as a founding member, you get to shape the club. While the basic Toastmasters meeting structure will still be used, it can be adapted to support the unique goals of a podcast-focused club. Just like podcasting, a Toastmaster club thrives on consistency, planning, and collaboration, which is why the leadership roles remain essential as they mirror the rhythm of producing a podcast. If you think about it, podcasting requires publishing a schedule, planning episodes, coordinating guests, and managing logistics. And Toastmaster officer roles reinforce these habits. A president and a VP of education, they do strategic planning, they do scheduling, and they keep the team aligned. The VP of public relations does messaging, branding, and promotes episodes. The secretary does documentation, organization, and tracking progress. And a treasurer and a sergeant at arms, they manage logistics, resources, and the operational flow. So these roles teach you to run a podcast just like a real project, not just a hobby. When you think about how meeting roles strengthen your podcasting skills, we went over some of them earlier as well. The same applies. Each one builds a skill that podcasters rely on. Toastmaster of the day, that's the episode host. They run the meetings, they set the tone, they manage the transitions, and they keep the meeting flowing and engaging as they guide the audience through each segment. Then you have the speaker, who's the content creator, who delivers a speech. They learn clear messaging, strong storytelling, and they develop confident delivery. The speakers practice crafting content that translates directly to their episodes. We talked about being an evaluator, and that would be what I would call an on-air performance improvement, because the evaluator helps you listen critically. We talked about that, identify your strengths and your growth areas, and improve your pacing, your clarity, and obviously your presence. This is the foundation of becoming a better host and interviewer. The timer role, that aligns with episode pacing. Timing is everything in podcasting, keeping your segments tight, avoiding rambling, and maintaining that listener engagement because you want them to come back for each episode. The counter and grammarian, that provides a cleaner audio. It creates verbal discipline. Your word choice, your clarity, and the reduction of filler words, those are all essential for professional sounding audio. Table topics, we all know, interviewing, improving, those are things that help a podcaster think on their feet, to ask those spontaneous questions. As Kimberly mentioned, she does not prepare the questions. She is learning how to speak without having a script. You want to keep the dialogue flowing, and you want to be able to respond naturally to surprises. And this role is perfect training for interviews. The general evaluator, that person sees the big picture. They identify what worked, what could be improved, and how did the episode feel overall. This mirrors the role of a podcast producer reviewing the full experience. Big picture, when you combine all the Toastmaster roles you're practicing, hosting, interviewing, storytelling, timing, editing, audience engagement, and quality control. In other words, a Toastmasters meeting becomes a live rehearsal space for podcasting because, as we all know, Toastmasters is a safe place. We get the practice. It's a learning lab. It's where you're able to hone in on those skills, find out how to strengthen the skills that you have, and let go of those skills that, well, I wouldn't call them skills. Let go of those bad habits. We'll call it that. So that gives you a general tie-in to how Toastmasters and a podcasting club will combine. I am now going to again open up the floor for any questions you might have about the, being in a podcasting club or just about podcasting in general. And I know we have some podcasters here, whether you're a novice or an experienced, feel free to answer the questions as well, because this is a community and we all, as Toastmasters, do help each other out. So do we have some more questions?
Actually, I have a question. I'm Robert Tompkins from Sunset Toastmasters. Are there any Toastmaster groups in existence now that we're talking about now about podcasts?
Yes, there is. Sue and Edith, I believe each of you belong to a podcast club in a different district. District 83 currently does not have one. We hope to be able to start one.
Then just to follow up, it sounds great. I'd like to participate. However, if it turns out that 20 participants is a barrier, is it an option to join another club since it's going to be over something like Zoom and you could be anywhere to participate?
You can, it's always an option to join any Toastmasters club that fits you. However, I would love to be able to start one within our district. A lot of us know each other, we're in the same vicinity, and it may also lend the opportunity to get together every once in a while as a group if you're in the territory. But I cannot say you can't join another club, no, but I don't want you to.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we do that. What I'm suggesting is if it turns out we can't meet the 20 participant minimum. That's why I brought up the subject.
I understand. I understand. We're going to try our best to make it happen.
You can certainly have your meetings while you're working towards becoming an official Toastmasters group.
Absolutely. We have done that in the past as well, where we're close to the 20, but not quite there. You can start some meetings to get started, to get rolling, and then invite guests. And once you hit that 20, you could officially charter at that point. Thank you for adding that in, Greg. Edith, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Pamela. Yeah, I'm in another club, and actually one of the founders of that club is also a participant here tonight, Michael Dugan. So I did join Podmasters Advanced, which is District 84, I believe, and I've really enjoyed that experience. I love District 83, of course, which is my home district. I'm in two clubs here, and I would love to be a charter member of a club in District 83. I think my two questions, and thank you for the presentation tonight, everyone. So my
Thanks very much for coming in to see us here in Queely's Bar in Milltown. You might
So two questions I have. Can the club that's in process of chartering meet before it hits 20 members? And then how long do we have to hit that 20? And then also my biggest issue will be what night is it the chartering members that decide what day or night it meets? Because I'd hate to have to give up another club.
Yes, I understand. Yes, it is possible. Let's say, for instance, we get 12 people tonight that say, yes, I want to do this. That's not quite 20. If you want to start meeting as a club, you're not official, but you can still meet as a club, do practice and develop what you want that club to look like. The founding members are the ones who will determine how your meetings will run, what the cadence is, whether you want to do, you know, once a week, every other week, once a month, whatever your choice is. It is you guys that will make that decision. You will also make the decision on who the club leaders are going to be. As I mentioned, you still have to have the typical Toastmasters roles with the president and VPE, et cetera, et cetera. So it is still a Toastmasters club. You're still going to do a lot of the basic operations of a Toastmasters club, but you can design it specifically to help you with your podcasting goals. Did that answer your questions? Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I have another one if no one else wants to jump in there. And I haven't looked at the international website regarding this. Is there or will there be a pathway specific to this, to podcasts?
There is not a pathways per se that is geared towards podcasting. However, if you know how to look at the projects and pathways, you can very easily tie them to podcasting. One of the things that you guys will probably be seeing soon that I've already got a sneak peek at is Toastmasters is introducing what they call their vintage, I think it's called Vintage Path. And that is an, I'm not going to say old, but it's a past curriculum from way back when Smedley first started. That particular path, I think, works perfectly for a podcast club. The way they organize those projects, they're not specific to podcasting, but they still work. The trick with the vintage is that you have to already have another path before you can actually make that purchase. But again, even in your current path that you're working in, there is a way to tie that to the podcasting club.
Pamela, can I share something real quick?
Yes, Michael.
Well, first of all, thank you. This was fantastic. Every time I get to hear Greg, I just light up, but also being around podcasters and people that have energy around podcasting. I'm a podcaster now for 5 years, and this will be year five. I launched the podcast by following level four podcasting through Pathways. Had never known that it had existed, and because of Pathways, it helped me launch this podcast. But also, the level five project is the High Performance Leadership Project,
Mhm.
and the magic behind that is that you can gather people that are Toastmasters and non-Toastmasters and you meet for 5 sessions or longer and you plan your podcast as a project. And that was the most incredible experience for me that really helped me launch my chef podcast. And I'm so grateful to the people that were involved, but I would encourage everyone to do that. So the person that asked the question about pathways, pathways is directly related to podcasting, level four and level five.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I never would have thought of that. That is excellent. Edith has her hand up again.
Thank you. One more question. So understanding that I believe the idea is this would be an advanced or a specialized club. So, so I don't know, will the decisions about the absolute requirements be up to the founding members, or are there some hard and fast decisions that, like, Pamela, for instance, do people have to achieve level two in another club? And the reason why I ask is I believe that to recruit new members these days, podcasting is a fantastic way to get people in who've never been part of Toastmasters. And I personally, so I don't know if I'm speaking, this would be allowed or not, but I'd prefer to see this as a specialty club that also welcomes people brand new to Toastmasters because I think it's a great entrance ramp and not require, oh, you have to be in another club at level two above, blah, blah, blah.
Well, the good thing is that this will not be launched as an advanced club. It will not require any special education, and it is open to people who are just exploring that possibility. People may join with the thought maybe sometime in the future I might want to do some podcasting, but let me learn about the process. Let me learn about the production. Let let me collaborate with people of like mind. So this would be open to others that are not currently podcasters.
So it's like a specialty club, but not an advanced club.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. The focus will be on podcasting. Everything that you do in your meeting will somehow relate to it. Any other questions? Yes, Robert.
This has to do with direction. Given that it requires technical skills and it's a specialization, will there be a mentor to the club or a consultant or someone who's had experience to set up a framework so that we could work within?
One of the things you need to keep in mind, as you see, there are some Toastmaster members here who are podcasters that have that experience. But one of the things when you're deciding how you want your meetings to run, it would be my recommendation that you have educational sessions and meetings. You can invite people like Greg, who has been doing this for many years, to come and speak or focus on a particular skill set. We have lots of, as I said, lots of podcasters within Toastmasters, not just within 83, but within Toastmasters. And a lot of podcasters are open to coming in and talking to you as well. So I would hope that when this club is formed, that you will have regular educational sessions to talk about these types of things.
So would that be led by the Vice President of Education? And would that imply that the agenda sequence might be different than a regular meeting so that possibly up front at the beginning of a meeting. As an example, we have an educational experience and then we go into a meeting. Is that possibly an option?
It is an option. It is an option. You, as a, particularly those who start the club, you can make the decision exactly how you want your meetings to run. You can change them up meeting by meeting. Maybe one meeting you'll have an educational feature in there, one speaker, educational speaker. Maybe another one you'll have two speakers and no educational session. You can do demos, you can practice the podcasting, tying it to one of your projects. There's a lot of different ways that you can form a specialty meeting, a specialty club meeting. So yes, you have that flexibility. And because it is a specialty club, I believe it's essential that you do have regular educational sessions, even if it's just to talk about equipment or talk about how to produce or talk about the different platforms you can use for your podcast, because there's a lot out there.
Well,
Greg,
if no one else is jumping in.
Go ahead.
If I may ask another question, if no one else wants to.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So as I see it, this is a wonderful opportunity in terms of over time having a meeting like this. There is a challenge in terms of orientating what I call newbies, people who come into the club later on. With the present structure of Toastmasters, it's easy to get someone involved. Have a mentor, for example. We have a sequence of what to do, the icebreaker, for example. However, with this type of club, I'm trying to imagine over time what that would entail, given that the charter members will have developed expertise, let's just say 6 months into the club. And we have newbies. And then we have to figure out how to get them going to learn what we have learned or provide a mentor or what. Because a mentor, in my mind, will take a lot of more involvement than a typical club, given the many aspects of putting on a podcast. So perhaps could you address that?
Sure. And Sue actually put her hand up, and I was going to call on you, Sue, anyway, because she has been through this in another club that started. So Sue, would you mind chiming in?
Thank you, Pamela. And Robert, to answer your question, I've been involved in another Toastmaster podcasting specialty club like Edith. The one I'm in is not an advanced club, but since that club has been around for approximately 5 years, I too am a charter member, and we've had people come join the club over the years. So what I hear you saying, Robert, is orientation for new members. We have our standard club members, we have our officer team, but we also have a tech and production team, technology and production. Somebody's in charge of managing the projects. I happen to be a graphic designer. I design the cover art for everybody's podcast. We have an assistant project manager. We have other people on the team. And the team lead regularly will hold an orientation session for exactly what you described, Robert. The brand new members who join the club. They are interested in podcasting. They may or may not be Toastmasters, but so far everybody's been a Toastmaster in another club. But we're not restricted to only taking existing Toastmasters, which is different from our initial vision. So regularly we will have an introduction session, and new members can join that introduction session separate from a club meeting. And Any existing members who want a refresher or who want to go and support these new members can join in. These are held regularly, and I believe they're also recorded. So if anybody wants to listen in after the fact, they can. Technical things, processes and procedures, how we run our meetings, and all that. And in answer to one of your other questions, if I may, Pamela and friends, the Toastmasters educational program absolutely maps to Pathways projects and vice versa. And one of the things that Toastmasters introduced back in October of 2025, those education sessions, 10 to 15 minutes, and they're all about Toastmaster topics. But guess what, folks? In the other club that I'm in, everybody who takes on an education session and uses those canned presentations customizes them for podcasting. Back to you, Pamela.
Thank you, Sue, for that input. And Edith pointed out something in the chat box that I also agree with. I think the key is members can learn to do podcast style interviews, but don't actually have to launch their own podcast per se at any point in time. Some people may be joining, may not want to start a podcast, but they just might be interested in the process and what's involved. So that is a true statement. Darnell, you have a question?
Quickly, yes. This sort of reminds me of the club we had in Staten Island with Fran, Toastmasters in the community.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But
Is
can you
this
for those people who don't know about that, can you expand on that?
Let me see if I remember. Fran used to have a club in Staten Island, and she would have Toastmasters, of course, from Staten Island or wherever. I know some people from Jersey City went over there as well, but she always had individual guest speakers on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And that came to mind when I heard you talking about it.
Yeah, it's very similar. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
May I address Darnell's question?
Sure.
It's Toastmasters in the community. It folded in 2019 when Fran Okeson became sick prior to COVID. It had nothing to do with COVID. She was sick prior to COVID. I was a member of that club for approximately 5 years. Yes, we learned Toastmaster skills. We had a Toastmaster meeting. We taped 2 Toastmaster meetings back to back on a Saturday morning. And being involved with that club helped me a lot, having a presence on screen when everybody had to shut down and go virtual back in 2020. Looking at the camera, having confidence, speaking up, all those skills. So yes, Darnell, that was very much a part of what I did and helped also with the podcasting.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions before we close out? Because we've hit the 8:00 hour.
I put the question in chat, but I can ask verbally. Do you have any idea of the membership fee?
This is just like any other Toastmaster club. So all the fees are exactly the same. It is $60 for every 6 months. If you can be a dual member, if you belong to another club, you can join this club. I don't like to say, but you could transfer, but I hate to take away from other clubs. If you are brand new to Toastmasters, in addition to that $60, there is a $25 new member fee, $25 plus $1. I forget how much the tax is, but it's only taxed on the $25. But that's only if you're brand new Toastmaster, never been a Toastmaster before. But
so you don't anticipate having extra, asking members for extra money for, I don't know, club activities or an extra budget?
That is a possibility. That is a possibility. That may be something the club will incorporate at some point in time. My plan is when this takes off, Since you will be meeting via Zoom and there is a cost associated with Zoom, the district will donate a full year of Zoom subscription for the club, but after that year, you would be responsible for covering that cost. So you may want to include that fee unless one of the members of the club has an account that they're willing to share. Sue?
Yes, thank you, Pamela. Quick question. Wouldn't the charter members also be responsible for paying a portion of the club charter fee?
Thank you for that. I forgot about that. Yes. To start a new club in Toastmasters, there is a $125 charter fee. If we got exactly 20 members, that would be an additional $6.25. Not a lot. If you get more than 20 members, it would be less than that. That's one time. You never have to pay that again. And it would just go along with your normal Toastmasters annual membership dues. I hope that answered that question. Thank you for keeping me honest, Sue. Do we have any other questions? Terry, you're on mute.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks. I just sent in an application to Toastmasters. If I join, and I mean, obviously I'm joining, and I gather that is for I'm going to use the word chapter. So if I went into this, how does that work if you're already a member of one group and you join another? I mean,
There's
a member of more than one at one time, or
you can be a member of more than one club. Every club is independent, so you would be paying dues to each club separately. You don't pay once and go across. That is one way of doing it. And as I said, the other way of doing it is transferring into a club. And what that would do means you're leaving one club and coming into another. Again, I try not to support that too much unless you're having a problem with the other club, because I don't like taking away members from existing clubs.
but if somebody wants this one,
Instead of,
well, it has to be instead of then, or else you have to pay double dues.
right. And there's many of us in this room that belong to multiple clubs. We pay double, triple, quadruple. So to do. Some people do. Some people only want to belong to one club. That's their right. But Toastmasters, there are many Toastmasters who are are dual members at minimum. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I also
Okay.
believe there's a requirement when you're chartering a new club that a certain number have to be brand new members. I don't think you
Yes.
could. I'm not sure if it's still this. It used to be, this is years ago, was 17, had to be new and 3 could be transfer. I don't know if that's still the case or if it's changed.
Well, it's changed a little, but yes, you can only transfer, I think it is 3.
Okay.
But the other 17 do not have to be brand new.
It's been 15 years since I've been a
Yeah,
district leader.
they keep changing the rules on that. Edith?
I second Marcia's question in chat. Marcia put a great question in chat. Some of us are very anxious for the answer.
The next steps. Well, I will be sending an email to everyone who attended this session to see if you're interested. And if you are, you would complete the application that I attached to the email. Depending on how many we get, will determine what the next steps at that point is. If we don't reach the full 20, we're going to probably arrange a meeting with those who have expressed interest, see how you want to move forward. We could continue to solicit for new members, you may decide you want to meet for a while until you get to that 20. Again, a lot will depend upon what happens with the actual interest in being one of the founding members. Sue?
Yes, thank you, Pamela. Edith asked this earlier, and although this was a very exciting meeting and I would love to join, before I would complete an application and make any kind of commitment, I would need to know when we will be meeting. I see many of us in this room are existing Toastmasters and anxious to meet new Toastmasters, new podcasters, existing podcasters. But for me, the big question would be when. So although I'd like to complete an application and be one of those first people to raise my hand, when we meet would factor into it. And I'm sure others in the room have the same question.
Yes. And again, that would be dependent upon you guys on what the best day or days to meet. Michelle had asked, how long can we meet before becoming an official club? Believe it or not, can be unlimited, but we don't want that to happen. Because it becomes a little difficult when you're meeting too long and nothing happens. My hope is that we can get this club started within the next 30 days. If we see that that's something that's not going to happen, I will leave it up to those members or those people who want to start the club to determine how they want to move forward. I know of a potential club that has been meeting for a year and a half now, and they have not reached the 20. It's interesting because they were at 19 and then they dropped to 15 because it took so long. People dropped out. So that's why I would not suggest you hang on too long. And she also asked, can we sample an agenda from an existing club? I'm assuming you're talking about an existing podcast club because District 83 does not have one. You can ask Sue, I know belongs to one club, Edith belongs to another club, if they're willing to share that with you.
Yeah.
That would be up to them.
Yes, I could do that. While we're still talking, I can go look in my archives and get a sample agenda from one of my other clubs, and I'll put it in the chat. But could we also have the sponsors like set up another meeting to follow this one up before we send in the applications to at least get started with a time?
We can try that, yes.
That might be helpful, not just to me, I'm not just being selfish, but I'm sensing some of the sentiments from the other people in this Zoom room. Thank
you. Robert and then Karen.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm understanding you have a recording, and I imagine you reach out to us, you have a link to that recording. I had to leave for a couple of minutes. I'd like to see it again. And then regarding the chat section, is there a way to download the chat section? There are a lot of links in there. I'm not sure how to make that happen.
Yes, there is. Let's see if I remember how to do that. If someone knows real quick,
I can help you with that. Go to the chat and the three dots up in the right-hand corner, pull that down, it'll say save chat. Hit save chat and it'll save it for you.
I go to chat.
On top where it says podcasting?
It says interest meeting dash podcasting and the next three dots.
Got it.
The three dots, it'll say save chat.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
I got it
again.
Did you open the chat window, Robert?
Yes, it's open.
And you see the three dots up at the top right-hand corner?
How does it?
Yeah, I don't see three dots.
It's up there. How does that save it? Is it a download?
It should show you where it's saving it to.
It'll save to your computer.
Okay. But it'll show you where it's saving it on your computer.
Doesn't I don't see that. I see where I copied it. I clicked on save chat, but I don't know where it's going to go on.
You click on the open folder option.
Huh? I'm sorry.
Once you click on save chat, chat saved appears at the bottom of the chat window, and then the blue link says show in folder. Then that's going to open up the folder where the chat text is saved.
Oh boy.
I don't,
Anyways, not working for me.
I don't see that. I don't see it at the bottom. I don't see anything at the bottom.
Click the three buttons, the three dots again, and it'll show up again.
Wait, save.
Well, and you click save chat after the buttons.
Show in folder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marcia just put in the chat like a
that's good. Yeah.
visualization. So before we run out of time, if we could just let Karen ask her question.
Thanks, Kimberly. Is there any ethical issue with us going back to our home clubs and talking about this and saying we would like you to join, not transfer, but consider joining this club if you have any interest in podcasting? That's okay, or there's no
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm on it.
Edith?
Will this recording be made available or posted like in the district newsletter? Or I don't know if you wanted to keep it private or not. And same thing with the downloading chat. If one person downloads it, they could share it if they wanted to.
I can download the chat and share it with those who have attended. The recording we can post on the district YouTube site. And if you've never been on it, we do post some things on there.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much. I especially want to thank our special guest, Greg, who, without his expertise, I don't know if we would have been able to accomplish this session. Kimberly and Sue, you are both wonderful. Thank you for helping facilitate this. You both are the experienced podcasters. As I said, I know nothing about podcasting other than listening to them. But I've learned a lot. Who knows? I may even be, I don't know if I can handle another club. I'm already a member of 4, but you never know. But feel free to share this information with anybody and everybody you know. If you're a Toastmaster and you belong to a club, share it with your club members. If you have friends or family who are not Toastmasters who might be interested in something like this, let them know about it. But we will continue to try to gain new members. Once we hit the 20, we will charter, but we can still add more members from there if need be. Okay.
I'd be interested in learning when we'll meet again as a group to decide next steps.
I will get back to each of you on that. As I said, I'm going to send out the email, and those who do want to move forward, we can arrange to have a meeting to kind of chat about logistics.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.